Wild Feather Nunez at the Gorman Museum, UC Davis. Bill Wild Feather Nunez had always been drawn to the spaces where tradition and modernity collided. As a Native American artist and college student, his weekends were often filled with sketchbooks, beadwork, and long contemplations about how to carry forward the voices of his ancestors while still speaking in the language of his generation. On a cool autumn afternoon, he stepped into the Gorman Museum of Native American Art at UC Davis, a place he had heard whispered about in student circles as both sanctuary and catalyst. The museum was quiet, sunlight falling in pale beams across polished floors. The air carried the faint smell of cedar, a subtle nod to ceremony. Bill's moccasins tapped softly as he moved from one exhibit to the next, his eyes absorbing color, form, and memory. He paused at beadwork, shimmering like constellations, then leaned into the brushstrokes of oil paintings that spoke of landscapes both familiar and distant. Yet it wasn't until he turned a corner and saw Andy Everson's Resistance that his breath caught in his chest. The canvas stood tall, commanding at 38.5 by 26.5 inches, the deep black background making the figure at its center seem to glow. A stormtrooper from Star Wars stared back, but not in the sterile white armor Bill had grown up seeing in movies. Instead, its armor was alive with Kwakwa and Comox design elements, sweeping ovoids, crescents, and formline patterns rendered in red and black, ancient and defiant. Bill stepped closer, his reflection faint on the glass that protected the print. He studied the lines, how they wove themselves across the helmet like a mask of ceremony, how the chest plate carried the strength of a crest, how even the mechanical gloves were reclaimed with symbols of human ancestry. The title, Resistance, echoed in his mind. Stormtroopers, he whispered, recalling their role as faceless enforcers of empire. But here, his thoughts stretched outward. Here, the empire wasn't only fictional. For Indigenous peoples, empires had always been real. Colonial, systemic, invasive. To see an object of pop culture domination draped in native design was a reclamation, a declaration that survival was not passive, but active resistance. Bill felt the pulse of his own journey stir in response. He thought of his grandmother's stories, how she'd told him that every bead, every line of a design, carried a purpose. To remember, to fight, to heal. He thought of himself as a student, caught between lectures on modern art history and the deeper histories his blood carried. Here, in Everson's work, the two converged. He pulled a sketchbook from his backpack, his pencil already moving. He wasn't copying the stormtrooper. Instead, he drew his own vision. A figure half in regalia, half in futuristic armor, straddling worlds yet whole. Hours seemed to pass as Bill remained in front of the piece, caught in its dialogue. When he finally rose to leave, he looked back once more, his heart steady with resolve. Resistance wasn't only about saying no. It was about creating, reimagining, surviving, and leaving marks for others to follow. And in that moment, Bill Wild Feather Nunez knew his art was part of that continuum.